Good evening, I'm Jess De Los Santos. The big stories tonight. The countdown begins as the Office of the President receives the enrolled copy of the Anti-Terrorism Bill. COVID-19 infections in the Philippines are inching closer to the 23,000 mark with over 500 new cases. But that's not the only thing rising. Violence against women and children, as well as unwanted pregnancies, are increasing. Some private schools are already calling for lifeline, warning closure come August. And it might be a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. One stadium is finally cleared of COVID-19 patients. We begin tonight with the much criticized Anti-Terrorism Act of 2019 now being a step closer to becoming a law. The Congress transmitted the enrolled bill to President Duterte's table earlier today. Man Los Baños tells us more.
Malacanang is assuring the public that the anti-terrorism bill will go under the microscope before President Duterte decides on its fate. Presidential spokesman Harry Roque says the president can drop provisions which will be deemed unconstitutional.
Agad na aking sinabi dati, yan naman po ay dadaan sa proseso, pag-aaralan mabuti ang mga probisyon at kung meron po mga probisyon na unconstitutional, then i-advise si Presidente kung i-veto o hindi.
The Justice Department says it has an internal timetable to submit its comments on the bill to the Office of the President in 15 days. Senate President Tito Soto has expressed confidence that the Chief Executive will not veto the measure, which he and House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano enrolled to the palace this morning. In a text message, the Senate leader questioned why some congressmen are still insisting to hold the bill's passage when it has been agreed upon by both chambers of Congress. The lower chamber swiftly adopted the Senate's version of the bill, which seeks to amend the Human Security Act of 2007 in a bid to strengthen the country's counter-terrorism efforts. Still, a number of lawmakers are up in arms with the proposed bill. In a virtual presser this morning, Senator Risa Ontiveros branded as a form of people power the growing opposition to the Anti-Terrorism Bill, as well as a decision of some Solons to withdraw their initial affirmative votes.
Isa itong forma ng people power din, ng ating mga mamamayan sa kanilang mga kinatawan. And kaya rin siguro na-embolden yung ibang mga counterparts namin sa House na una nang bumoto ng no sa Anti-Terrorism Bill na sa loob din ng rules of the House of Representatives, subukang i-roll back, mag-push back dun sa legislative status ng bill.
She also expressed hope that the Supreme Court would do its part in scrutinizing the bill should there be a need to elevate it to the High Court. President Duterte has made no secret of his support for amending the Human Security Act of 2007 and adding teeth to the country's counter-terrorism efforts. Recall that the president certified the Anti-Terrorism Bill as urgent earlier this month as the country grapples with the COVID-19 pandemic. He has 30 days to either veto or sign the legislation or else it will lapse into law. Reporting for News 5, Man Los Baños, we are One News.
Several groups are making last-minute calls for President Duterte to veto the anti-terrorism bill now that the ball is in his court. In a statement, AG Teachers Party List Representative Franz Castro urged the chief executive to junk what she calls the anti-people measure. She insists that the bill is being fast-tracked to prevent more lawmakers from withdrawing their affirmative votes. Presidential spokesman Harry Roque's former law firm Center Law also issued a strong stance against the recent development, saying it only reveals the government's completely wrong priorities amid a pandemic. For its part, the Integrated Bar of the Philippines zeroed in on the constitutionality of the planned creation of an Anti-Terrorism Council or ATC. The IBP questions the ATC's power to authorize in writing the taking into custody of terrorism suspects, which, under the 1987 Constitution, is exclusively a judicial power. Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan, one of the only two senators who voted against the anti-terrorism bill, explains the rationale behind his decision. Apart from questioning the constitutionality of assigning the ATC the power to arrest suspected terrorists, the senator also disapproves of the 14-day detention without warrant. But when asked by Cito Beltran on One News's agenda regarding the entry of terrorist money, Pangilinan acknowledged that this is indeed a serious matter.
When I interviewed Congressman Jericho Nograles, I hope I got his name correct. He said that the reason that they needed to push for this anti-terrorism bill more than anything, he didn't even cite terror or terrorism. He said that the financial institutions were pressuring the Philippines because tayo lang daw yung iilan na walang batas that secures or protects against terrorist funding.
I think it's a combination of both. You know, the terrorist money, di ba, going in and out of, di ba, of our banking system is precisely a major concern. No? Ginagamit yung ating sistema ng finance, yung banking system para makapag-ano ng kanilang terrorist activities to fund their activities. So talagang that is a serious concern. After all, itong money laundering, di ba, is really a criminal anti-crime, di ba, policy. Kasi
Meanwhile, Senator Panfilo Lacson, the bill's main sponsor in the Senate, took a swipe at critics protesting against it. In a tweet, he asked them if they aspire to be at the top spot of the Global Terrorism Index, where the Philippines currently ranks 9th. He says if critics want more deaths due to terrorism, then go ahead and junk the anti-terror bill. It's a tale of two foreign affairs secretaries. On one hand, in a statement, DFA Chief Teodoro Locsin hailed what he describes as a blooming relationship between the Philippines and China. He made the message for the 45th anniversary of PH-China diplomatic relations. Apart from going lengthily about his personal exploits in China, the country's top diplomats said that friendship between the two countries flourished into a new partnership for mutual profit and progress under the current administration. But his predecessor, former Foreign Affairs Secretary Albert Del Rosario, said that China only pretends to be a friend while seizing our territory and harassing our people. Del Rosario added that China owes the country billions of pesos for its continuing abuses in the West Philippine Sea. Del Rosario said that the country could make China pay for its abuses through making its officials pay criminally, including the seizure of assets and properties owned by China in the Philippines to satisfy its debt to Filipinos. Del Rosario also noted how surveys show that 9 out of 10 Filipinos believe that the country should regain control of the West Philippine Sea. The Department of National Defense and the Armed Forces of the Philippines have formally opened a beaching ramp in Pag-asa Island. The pier will let the country's ships dock on the island to deliver goods and supplies for the residents. Defense Secretary Delfin Lorenzana said that this would also be used for delivery of large equipment and materials needed for the repair and construction of the island's airstrip. This is the first phase of the AFP's Basing Support System project. A total of 1.3 billion pesos is allocated for the project to build facilities in the Pag-asa Island. Meanwhile, human rights lawyer Shel Jokno slams the government for not responding proactively to the Recto Bank incident. In June last year, Filipino fishing boat Gemver 1 anchored in the West Philippine Sea after it was hit by a Chinese trawler. In a virtual roundtable discussion, Jokno says officials weren't swayed by the public outrage and didn't do much in terms of changing any policies. We'll pause for a short break, but when the big story returns, the country's infection count is inching closer to the 23,000 level. But one other thing that's on the rise, violence against women and children. And over 2,000 new lawyers might have to forego the traditional oath-taking for something more virtual. I'm Jess De Los Santos and you're watching The Big Story. Over 100 stranded passengers going to General Santos City finally arrived in their hometown after being stuck at the Ninoy Aquino International Airport for days. However, some passengers are still stranded at the airport due to travel restrictions in their provinces. JC Cosigo with the details.
Roselyn is not alone as she spent the night in Naiya. Trying her luck for a trip to go home to Davao City, she's 6 months pregnant. Her June 6 flight was cancelled due to travel restrictions in her hometown. She was applying for work in Saudi Arabia but had to forgo her plans after finding out in March that she's pregnant. She decided to go home instead since lockdowns were imposed.
Gusto ko na pong makauwi ng Davao. So, ngayon, cancel nga. Sana sa ating mahal na Pangulong Duterte, sana matulungan po kaming makauwi.
40 other Davao-bound passengers were also stranded in and outside the airport. 25-year-old Mayan Kayug also expressed her disappointment for not being informed that her June 8 flight was cancelled. She had to rebook her flight 4 times.
Kompleto na kami ng papers, tapos ganun, tapos wala man lang explanation na mabuti para sa amin. Nagmukha tuloy kaming tanga.
Cebu Pacific explains there might be lapses for those who went through agencies.
What happened was, meron kasing iba na kung iba po kasi ang nag-book ng ticket nila or travel agency, there are times po na hindi po namin nakaka-capture yung contact details ng actual passengers. And so, obviously, we would be unable to contact them at their correct with their correct details, and therefore, hindi nila matatanggap yung notification.
And while they're constantly updating their social media accounts and website, Cebu Pacific says it will still depend on travel restrictions imposed by authorities, like in the case of Davao.
Ang epekto po niyan ay limitado lang po ang flights to and from Davao City. And in the case of Cebu Pacific po, ang flight po natin between Manila and Davao ay Wednesdays po, June 10. So parang once a week lang po siya sa ngayon.
In the meantime, over 100 stranded passengers bound for General Santos City finally went home Tuesday after Cebu Pacific arranged a special flight for them. These included those who went through rapid testing last night at the Villamor Air Base and passengers at the airport this morning. But with some missing their flights, the airline can't help but ask for understanding.
We were flying since June 3, June 4, June 5. It's just so happened na talagang beyond our control kung bakit hindi kami nakapagpalipad starting June 6.
In a text message, aviation officials confirmed that the Jensen LGU has already allowed the entry of arriving passengers every Monday and Thursday. The Transportation Department, for its part, will inform the National Task Force about the plight of these new batch of stranded Davao-bound passengers.
Most probably, mas maganda kung nandoon sila sa Villamor Air Base. Magko-coordinate kami kung saan sila pwedeng mas magandang mailagay.
Authorities reiterate that passengers should not go to the airport unless they have confirmed flights. Airline companies were also told to coordinate first with LGUs before selling seats to passengers. For News 5, JC Cosico, we are One News.
Over 300 repatriated seafarers are set to return home to their families after being cleared of COVID-19. This as the government scrambles to immediately send home more returning Filipino workers. Greg Gregorio will tell us more.
337 returning Filipino seafarers have been allowed to go home after testing negative in PCR tests for COVID-19. These workers are employees of the Royal Caribbean Cruise and had arrived in Clark, Pampanga on June 6. One of their colleagues tested positive for the disease, while 7 others are stationed in a hotel awaiting their results. Those who were cleared of the disease were either provided flights or were made to wait for a sea trip to their hometowns. Among them is Ray. Although he's relieved by the fact that he is free of COVID-19, he failed to make it to his mother's burial last Friday.
Soothing sa feeling kasi ayos na. Ewan ko, hindi ko ma-explain eh. Kasi yung case ko, umuwi ako dahil sa nanay ko. Kasi compassionate leave ako eh. Yung nanay ko, pumanang yung nanay ko. Nakakalungkot kasi wala ka nang magawa eh kasi yun talaga yung process eh.
National Task Force Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer Carlito Galvez says they are working double time to send home the likes of Ray. In fact, unlike the previous batches of repatriates, this recent one only waited for 3 days before being allowed to go home. Galvez cites the country's increased testing capacity and the decongestion of testing laboratories in Manila.
Ngayon, kaya ginagawa natin na dinidecongest natin yung Manila, inopen natin yung Clark para at least manageable yung inaayos na rin po natin yung ating sistema na ang gagawin po natin ay talagang i-computerize na po natin ang ating mga data.
Health Secretary Francisco Duque III says the country now has 41 RT-PCR testing laboratories and 13 gene expert laboratories. He adds that more than 100 lab applications for accreditation are still pending at the Research Institute for Tropical Medicine. Interior Secretary Eduardo Años says the Interagency Task Force on Emerging Infectious Diseases is set to meet tomorrow to discuss the new recommendation on the country's COVID-19 data analytics.
Sa analytics, at dito natin makikita yung kabuuang sitwasyon down to the granular data in the barangays. And from there, we can draw up our recommendations to the President.
Anyo adds that some areas may be placed under modified general community quarantine next week. The IATF has vowed to look closely on the country's COVID-19 data so as not to make a mistake in easing quarantine restrictions. For News 5, Greg Gregorio, VR1 News.
COVID-19 cases are closing in on the 23,000 mark. This as the Health Department recorded a total of 518 new COVID-19 cases, of which 280 are fresh cases and 238 are late cases. To be exact, there are now 22,992 COVID-19 cases in the Philippines. The DOH also recorded 6 new COVID-19 deaths, bringing the total number of fatalities to 1,071. Meanwhile, a total of 4,736 people have recovered from the SARS-like disease, with 99 new recoveries. President Rodrigo Duterte said that almost 3,700 cases of violence against women and children have been reported to the police since quarantine restrictions started in Metro Manila. In the President's 11th weekly report to Congress, Duterte said that the Philippine National Police recorded 1,945 cases of violence against women and 1,754 cases of abuses against children and amid the community quarantine. The President said that the PNP Women and Children Protection Desks are working closely with LGUs to ensure that they are protected. He added that the Philippine Commission on Women has been actively responding to inquiries through various electronic platforms. But it's not only violence against women and children. The Health Department also saw a spike in unwanted pregnancies worldwide since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic. On the other hand, Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Vergere says there's been a decline in pregnant women coming to clinics and hospitals for prenatal checkups for fear of acquiring COVID-19. With this, the Health Department is set to launch an improved program on family planning.
We want to avoid unintended pregnancies from unmet family planning needs. Alam natin lahat that family planning is one of our essential health services together with immunization, with the provision of medicines like for TB, for HIV, and all. And it is these family planning services are provided in our facilities.
These are the other big stories today. Oath-taking for the country's fresh batch of lawyers will take on a new form. The Supreme Court Bank green-lighted a resolution which paves the way for an online video conference oath-taking. That's going to happen on June 25th and will be aired in state TV network PTV4. PNP Chief Archie Gamboa claims that activists arrested for protesting the controversial anti-terror bill outside the University of the Philippines, Cebu went too far and tested police officers' patience. Gamboa said that the 8 arrested were apprehended due to disobedience to authority. The 8 included 7 activists and a bystander who was documenting their arrest. Gamboa urges the public to air their sentiments through other avenues aside from mass gathering. Malacanang announced that 26 out of 30 death benefit checks were given to the families of health workers who died while responding to the COVID-19 crisis. Palace spokesman Harry Roque said that the health department also extended the sickness benefits checks to 17 out of 18 health workers who contracted severe COVID-19 while in the line of duty. The delivery of compensation benefits to health workers was fast-tracked after President Duterte expressed dismay over the delayed action. Coming up on the big story, the DepEd says schools are still allowed to charge for miscellaneous fees even if the classes are online. And all COVID-19 patients have recovered and have been discharged from a sports arena turned into isolation center in Manila. This is a big story, and I'm Jess De Los Santos. A number of private schools are planning to increase their tuition due to COVID-19 related revenue losses. But some may be forced to shut down if the situation does not improve. Camille Samonte with a story.
Angel was supposed to enroll her 2 children in a private school this coming school year. But with the lockdown forcing her to spend some of her savings, she might have to put her plans on hold.
Sana wag na munang taasan yung tuition. Instead, kung pwedeng ang babaan muna para naman makatulong din sa amin.
The tuition for each of her kids will cost around 27,000 pesos. This includes miscellaneous fees.
Siyempre, yung maibabawas nila in case sa miscellaneous or kung magiging wala na siya totally, mas maganda din yun kasi pangdagdag namin sa, like, kailangan mong magpa-install ng internet, kailangan mong bumili ng gadgets para sa mga anak mo dahil kailangan nila dahil online, so kailangan bumili ng gagamitin din nila siyempre.
Prior to the implementation of the enhanced community quarantine, close to 16,000 private schools have already applied for tuition fee increases. But the Education Department only approved 654 applications. A big part of the tuition fee hike will be allotted for the salary of teaching and non-teaching personnel. The DepEd also reminded the public that schools are still allowed to charge for miscellaneous fees, even if the classes are online.
Hindi ibig sabihin, pag online classes, wala na silang gastos. In fact, magkakaroon pa rin sila ng gastos dahil kailangan i-expand nila yung kanilang online capability, which includes yung mga communication channels. Tapos, kailangan pa rin sila mag-develop ngayon ng mga materials na can be used through online. Iba kasi yung materials for face-to-face.
According to the Coordinating Council of Private Educational Associations, enrollees in private schools decreased around to 30 to 50% because of the strict measures against COVID-19.
Kung walang magiging government economic intervention, mapipilitan sila na magsara or to consider closing by end of the month of August.
Without assistance from the government, Estrada warned that many private schools might close down. For News 5, Camille Samonte, we are One News.
But the lockdown may have proven to be a boon for telco giant PLDT as they see a spike in demand following quarantine restrictions. And despite delays in the rollout of some of its projects, they're still seeing some growth in the horizon. Shaila Francisco has the details.
Despite the COVID-19 pandemic, telco giant PLDT is bullish that they are growth-bound for the rest of the year. That's despite some variables remaining unknown. At the firm's annual stockholders meeting, PLDT Chairman Manuel Pangilinan says they are expecting service revenues and telco core income to fare better than last year's figures, and the lockdown may have played a part. Wireless and broadband revenue saw a steady pickup in the last 2 months after Easter Sunday, with increased demand for data. The firm says data usage surged 25% since the start of quarantine measures.
Revenues in April and May this year are already ahead of last year. I can assure you that there are steady hands on the tiller and the ship itself is sturdy. PLDT is in fact emerging stronger from this pandemic.
Last 4 quarters, I think we've shown momentum in terms of for the business. No, we as I said, it's a renaissance for the business. I think we started to really drive momentum. We were able to grab market share from our competitor, and I think I see that also happening still in the second quarter. I think we will still be slightly lower than the first quarter, obviously because of the pandemic and April being we were hit very very badly in April, obviously because of the lockdown, but we will only see a low single-digit decline vis-a-vis first quarter.
In 2019, service revenue climbed 8% to 157.7 billion pesos, its highest full-year revenue ever recorded. In the same year, core income jumped to 27 billion pesos, while net income surged to 22.5 billion pesos. While income dropped in the first quarter of 2020, PLDT still had a 9% growth in revenues. For the rest of 2020, PLDT is looking to slash 20 to 25% from its initial 83 billion pesos capital spending due to restrictions arising from limited mobility. It also expects 5G launch to be moved to the fourth quarter of the year. It's also looking to develop its marketing campaign, Simple Smart Ako, with the help of Korean superstar Yoon Bin. The campaign has so far shown, quote, overwhelming responses from its customers.
Our battle cry now is we want to continue being innovative, but we want to make it simple for customers to use our services and our products. Hopefully, we're able to address with our GigaLife platform that we're developing. We want to address the passions.
As they prepare for the new normal, PLDT is also looking to focus its efforts on e-health, e-commerce, e-learning, and online entertainment. Shaila Francisco, we are One News.
And time for some more good news. One of the first sports facilities in the country to open its doors to COVID-19 patients can finally breathe a sigh of relief. The Philippine Sports Commission says all 123 COVID-19 patients admitted at the Ninoy Aquino Stadium in Manila have been discharged after fully recovering from the disease. No fatality was recorded among those who stayed at the stadium, which was converted into a COVID-19 quarantine facility in April. The stadium will undergo thorough disinfection until Friday. And that wraps up today's big story. Catch us again tomorrow at 8 p.m. on Signal Channels 8 and 250. Please like our Facebook page, One News. For more in-depth analysis, visit our webpage, onenews.ph. I'm Jess De Los Santos, and we are One News. Good evening.